Alright, YouTube, here we go with part 2 of the complete and correct Glock takedown. Did the frame in part 1. Gonna do the slide in part 2. Good old 1911 watching over us from the background. Here we go. Simple. Don't be intimidated. It's nothing to it. We're gonna tear this slide completely down and put it back together in just a matter of minutes. Now, all you got to do, pop out your recoil spring and guide rod assembly. That's all you got to do to that. Take your barrel out. Everybody can do that. Nothing intimidating there. Now I recommend not changing this to a steel guide rod, which a lot of people like to do. There's no need for that. If it needed a steel guide rod, Glock would have put one in it. You go putting a bunch of aftermarket parts in your Glock, you ain't got a Glock anymore. Now, the other parts, I'm not sure how good this is going to come out, but if you see right here on the bottom of the slide towards the back, there's this metal part right here. That's the end of the striker. Now, right under that, there's a slot. That'll move up and down slightly. Right under it, there's a slot. What you want to do is put your punch right under it and push down. And I'll show you what you're pushing down in just a second. When you do that, you put your thumb over the back plate. Confederate flag. That's an option. Push down. Push the back plate off. Keep your thumb over the back. Once it starts, pull the back plate off. Be a little spring-loaded part in there. It'll go flying if you don't watch it. But once it pops loose, you're good. Now, you got your back plate off. Here's your striker assembly. Striker, your spring. Now, what you're pushing down on, if you can see this, when you take your punch and put it in here, I know my camera work is terrible. You're pushing down right under this piece of the striker, and you're pushing on this piece of plastic to push it down. Because if you see on the back of the back plate, I hope you can see it, there's a round groove where this locks in. When it's in the slide, this locks in it. That's what holds the back plate on. So when you push it down, you're taking that away from the back plate, it'll slide off. Simple as that. Now, if you notice, there's another spring right in the corner. Your striker come out of the big hole in the middle. There's another spring and a rod in the corner. Just take your finger, pull it out. Notice the spring goes towards the rear. And it's just a steel rod. Spring towards the rear. Remember that. That is the spring for your extractor, which is on the side. Now here's your drop safety, your firing pin safety right here. This is another part you want to polish on your 25-cent trigger job. Take a Q-tip and some metal polish and just polish the end of this where the transfer bar and the trigger that we talked about, this part that sticks up, rubs against this. When you pull the trigger, it pushes this down and lets the firing pin go forward. That's one of the safeties that Glock has. People say don't want a Glock because it don't have a safety. Glock, in fact, has 3 safeties. So that's just how people think. They don't see a safety lever on the side. They think it doesn't have a safety. So it does have a safety. As a matter of fact, it has 3 safeties. And this is one of them. So what you want to do to get this extractor out, turn it over and just push this pin in, a little spring-loaded plunger, push it in with your thumb. If your gun's clean, the extractor will fall out. If it's dirty like mine, you might have to wiggle it a little. But there is your extractor. Hard to see, it's dirty. I apologize for the camera. Now, once you do that, this is free. you can pull this out. Be careful, there's a little tiny spring on the top of it, and it's not hooked to it, it's just sitting in a hole. So there you go, there's all your parts. You got your guide rod, recoil spring, got your barrel, got your little spring and plunger for your extractor, got your back plate, got your striker assembly, got your firing pin safety and spring. Remember, that spring's just sitting there, it'll fall off. If you don't watch it, you lose it. Then you got your extractor. Now, that's about all you need to do to the slide. It's completely down. Only other thing you could take off would be the sights. Front sights, a 3/16 nut, or a bolt, I should say. Rear sight, you just push it out with a sight pusher. That's not necessary. Only other part in there is a channel liner. You can't take that out without destroying it. Don't need to take it out. If you ever do, you just run a lag bolt or something down in here and grab it with the threads and pull it out and replace it. Shouldn't hardly ever have to worry about that. This slide now, you could drop it in your sonic cleaner without fear of hurting anything. Now, if you want to take this apart, that's no problem either. The easiest way to do it is to set it back in the channel where it goes. Put it backwards where it's pointing up. You got your, well, I apologize for my camera work here. So you're going to take it and set it in backwards. It's the easiest way to do it. Now, what holds this spring in is two keepers. They're two pieces. They're almost just like the keepers, valve keepers in an engine. If you've ever done a valve job on a gasoline engine, you'll probably recognize these keepers, except these are tiny and these are plastic. But all you're going to do is pull down this spring and pull these keepers out. There's two pieces. They just fit in the top of the spring. Pull them out. And there you go. There's your firing pin spring. There's your firing pin. And you can take it out of this little plastic cup. So that's as far as you can go. And you're down all the way. No tools required. No stress, no drama. It's nothing to it. Put the firing pin, you can clean this. Whatever you need to do. Put the plastic liner back on it. Set it back in the back of your slide backwards. This little tab here is going to set on the side of the slide to hold it up. Put your spring on it. Got that? And then your keepers. Like I said, they're tiny. I know I can't show them on camera. They're just tiny little keepers. There's two of them. If you ever do lose one or replace one, Glock recommends you replace them in pairs. I don't know what they cost. They can't be over 10 cents. But this is not something you take apart normally. Now, to put it back on, you got it in your channel liner. You got it in your firing pin channel backwards. You're going to just pull the spring down. Take the keeper. One in one side. One in the other side. They're small, and you drop them like I just did. Like I said, it's a little harder to do on camera. But it's nothing to be intimidated by. I'm going to drop it 3 or 4 times now that I'm trying to do it on camera. Once you get them in there, let go, and you're done. That's it. That's all it is to it. Now, you can buy a spring kit to make your trigger softer, lighter, and I've put it in this one. And what you're going to change is this spring right here. I don't recommend doing that for a carry gun. I don't carry this Glock 17. I got this trigger down to right at 3 pounds, maybe a little less. But you're going to change this spring. The stock one is a 5 pound. This is a 4 pound. The kit from Ghost comes with a 4 pound and a 6 pound. Now, the 4 pound is lighter, make your trigger lighter. They say there's a possibility of a light primer strike. I've never had one. I've shot hundreds of rounds through it, but they say don't put that. I would not do that for a carry gun. This is just a gun I go out here in my backyard and shoot a couple hundred rounds at a time. I don't ever carry it, so it don't bother me to have that 4-pound spring in it. Another spring you'll change in your spring kit to make your trigger lighter is this little firing pin safety spring. The last spring you would change, if you were going to change them, is the S spring I talked about in this video. You're going to get a stiffer one for that. That's not necessary, and that's not recommended either if you're going to use this gun for a carry gun. Well, now all we got to do is put it back together. So you put it back together the opposite way you took it apart. Like I said, don't be intimidated, just pay attention. Watch your spring on your little plunger. Put it back in the hole, make sure your spring stays on it. Push it in. You can set your extractor back in there. Simple as that. Drop your rod with the spring on it back down in there. Spring faces the rear. Then drop your firing pin assembly back in there. Do not oil that, by the way. You don't want any oil in that firing pin channel. Your only other step is putting your back plate back on. You're going to want to take something. You can use the punch. You can use anything. Just push the back of this striker down, this plastic part, until you get this started. Then it'll hold it down. And like I said, everything, something a little bigger than this punch would probably work better. Like this piece of plastic right here. Just push it down. Start your back plate. Once you get it started, that's all you got to do. Then you can take your punch and push down this little spring and rod up here at the top. And push your back plate up. And you're done. Hear it click. That was even more difficult than it normally is, because I was trying to show it, which I didn't do a very good job of. And you're back together. Drop your barrel in. Recoil spring guide rod back in. Get your frame. And put it back together. And you're done. Now, one way you can check, make sure you got everything like it's supposed to be. Pull the trigger. Safe direction. Check it. Check it for safety. Point it in the safe direction. Pull the trigger. The trigger will stay back like it's supposed to. Then you shake it. That noise you hear is the striker, the firing pin rattling. And that's normal. That's good. That's what you want to hear. If you don't hear that, you might have got something in there wrong, even though it's almost impossible to do. You check any Glock like that, and if you don't hear that, a lot of times, and you haven't torn it apart, and you don't hear it, it's because you got too much oil and gunk in your firing pin channel. You want that to be dry. So there you have it. Complete tear down of the slide, complete tear down of the frame. All I had was this. That's all you need. Don't even need that. You could do it with any kind of punch, as long as you can get these pins out. Now, I recommend if you have a Glock, give it a try. Don't be intimidated. Pay attention. Take your time. Nothing to it. And that's about all I got. And I'm about out of time anyway, so thanks for watching. See you next time.